So welcome to Inside the Maze. Rich Hagon, Zach Hill here with you, and on the big wall we're going to explore, go deep inside yesterday's draft viewer, just what was going on. So Zach, how have you decided to tackle what is a ton of data?
Right, so what we're going to do today, Rich, is look at actually half of the draft pods. I tried to get the side of the table with a lot of really highly recognized name players, and also a pretty interesting scenario. So we're going to be looking at Martin Yuza, Dennis Rashid, Thomas Rickerby, and Luis Scott Vargas.
Okay, so on the other side of the table you have Sean Geese, Oliver Polak-Rotman, then R4, and then finally you have Pablo Criado and Gabriel Nassif. So Yuza in 3, Rashid in 4, Rickerby 5, and LSV, who we watched draft in full, in 6.
Right, so an interesting thing that's going on in this particular draft is that we're going to see all 4 of these players started out with base red picks, and specifically base red-green picks.
Wow.
Now, a lot of draft formats, especially in, say, for example, Gate Crash, that would prove problematic for a lot of these players. But what we're going to look at is see how the archetypes were able to change and the players were able to adapt based on what was being passed to them and based on the composition of the pack.
Okay, so we're going to start with Martin Yuza. Now, his first 3 picks were Pywild Shaman, so he takes the rare straight away. Right. Then we go Viashino First Blade, 1 red and white for the 2/2 that arrives as a 4/4 haste for 3. Wow, what a beating. And then Zhur-Taa Druid. So that's the mana accelerant that also pings, deals 1 damage to the opponent. So that's the setup for Yuza. Let's go to the big board. And Zach, tell us what we're looking at here for Yuza's pick 4.
Right, so Yuza right now, a deck with a really low curve. I mean, he's got Pywild Shaman, Viashino First Blade, Zhur-Taa Druid, very aggressive cards, probably trying to set up a quick or a mid-range Naya deck. Now, Yuza's got a lot of options here. You've got Alive and Well. This card sets you up great in Celestia going into Return to Ravnica. It's a card that allows you to populate, also win a lot of tempo races. You've got Armored Wolf Rider, the Celestia guild card. You only get 1 guild common out of Dragon's Maze. A 4/6 for 5, no abilities, but a really good rate on that card. You've got Give. Take may or may not cast right now, but if you cast Give on a 2-drop, you're attacking for 5 on turn 3. So, I mean, even in the first 3 cards, Rich, we see a lot of options.
All right. Then you've got Hired Torturer, Izzet Cluestone, a Guild Gate, but not a Guild Gate that's particularly currently suited to any of his picks. Bottom row, Cruel Warrior. Now, do you think of that as just a straight 2/2 for 2 with an incidental upside, or are you planning on that being a 5/5 in a late game?
Well, it's one of those things that you can't sit and say oh, I really want to pay 6 mana every turn to give my creature +3/+3.
Sure.
But what happens sometimes, you just get to a board state where the opportunity cost on that ability very low. Either you've stalled out or he's your last threat, in which case, having a 5/5 it can push you through and win you an entire match. I think Crawl Warrior actually an extremely solid card, and it doesn't commit you to gold colors, so you know that you're probably going to be able to actually cast it on the second turn of the game.
Okay, so there's green mana in Drown in Filth, but it takes you towards black.
Right.
He's already got 1 Zhur-Taa Druid. Is there a number of Zhur-Taa Druids that are too much? Because they are, after all, 1/1s for 2 mana. So is there a number where you just go, yeah, I don't want more of those in my deck?
It's interesting. He is a 1/1 for 2, and he is a ramp card, so you don't want your mana density to be too high. Mana density just being the number of cards in your deck that just add mana to your mana pool and don't do anything else. But his ability to deal 1 damage a turn is extremely potent, and the more of those you have, the less your opponent can do about it. I mean, they just have to produce a removal spell. The other thing with Zhur-Taa Druid is, if you get several of these, you can actually build your deck, assuming that you're more likely to have a ramp card.
Right, so you can start looking at all those 6s and 7s and crazy costs and think they're going to come a turn earlier.
Right.
All right.
So anyway, what I'm thinking if I'm looking at this pack and I'm Martin Yuza is, you've got some quality options in Alive and Well, but right now you're curved very low. So I would be looking at either Crawl Warrior or Zhur-Taa Druid.
All right, let's see what Martin Yuza takes. And it's the Zhur-Taa Druid. So he's now got 2 of those. So Pywild Shaman, Viashino First Blade, and now double Zhur-Taa Druid. So let's see what's coming to him then for pack 5. Here it comes. Bane Alley Blackguard, not interested in that. There's some green in Beetle for Mage if he wants to head towards blue. Cluestone. Guildgate is there. So remember, Guildgate he saw in 4. It was an Orzhov Guildgate. There's a Guildgate here at 5, so no one feeding him from his right is hoovering up the guild gates early. That's worth noting. Has the Snare Squad. I knew I wasn't going to say that right the first time. That's a card that's kind of, it's good in an aggressive strategy. Looks like it's defensive as a 1/4 for 3, but there are a lot of cards like that in Dragon's Maze, and that's your fault, Zach Hill, it turns out. Maze Behemoth, huge. What about the bottom row? Anything there of interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you see give right here. You're not probably going to be able to cast both sides of it, but +3/+3 for 3 in an aggressive strategy, really good. The downside is, with 2 Jurta Druids as your 2-drops, those are not cards you necessarily want to be attacking with. I mean, you will. You'll be glad to attack for 4, but with a 2/2, you could attack for more and get through more blockers. So not necessarily as good as it would ordinarily be. Really late Tide Drinker. I think you've got to be looking at both Tide Drinker and Beetle Form Mage, kind of telling you what's open. And then, of course, you've got Thrashing Moss Dog. You know, a 3/3 reach for 4, a very good card in most formats, and Scavenge with your double Jurta Druid, you're going to be able to regularly scavenge this card a lot.
Okay, let's find out what Martin User takes, and he in fact goes for the Thrashing Moss Dog. So I can tell you the round is almost done. Players are heading towards the next round. So we're going to pile on to our next player, and it's going to be Dennis Rashid. He opens Flesh and Blood. He then goes Corrosed Gorgon, and then Armed and Dangerous. So let's take a look at his 4th pick, and what is he going to aim for here? You can see he's going to take Cruel Warrior. Why does he take that, Zach?
Well, I think, you see Drown in Filth. It's a reasonable removal card, but again, it's not exactly where you want to be, and you need some early drops. Flesh, Blood, late game, Armed, Dangerous, late game, Corrosed Gorgon, late game. If you look at this pack, the easiest early drop that you can take is the Crawl Warrior, and if the game goes late, the card's really good anyway.
All right, his 5th pick. Let's see where he gets the options. There is another Cruel Warrior there. Is there anything else? Well, we've got this run again, we see here. He ends up, let's take a look. I think it's
Crawl Warrior.
Cruel Warrior again.
The pack seems to be, again, between Drown and Filth, Crawl Warrior. You've got some Celestia options if you want to dip into white, but he basically just makes the same decision that he made the turn before.
Okay, now as we know, Dennis Rashid went on to be 3-0. He's the man who was the big winner in the pod. Next round, we go to England. God Save the Queen. It's Thomas Rickaby on debut. Now, this is interesting because he opened a Pyrewild Shaman just like Martin User did and took it just like Martin User did. And Zach, he went mono-coloured all the way.
Yes.
He wasn't interested in 2s and gold and so on. He was just, let's be straight, single colour. Pyrewild Shaman, Rakdos Drake, Fatal Fumes, and then that sets up this pick 4. So we got Clear a Path for red, there's a nice Thrashing Moss Dog there, Zurta Druid if he wants to go out, but he takes another Rakdos Drake. Do you like that pick?
I see where the pick is coming from. On one end, you see Gruul Guildgate, you see Jurta Druid, you kind of have to think that red-green is open, which us looking at the entire pack is actually the exact opposite of open. Right here. So, I mean, it's kind of misleading to see both of these. I think what he's thinking is just like, look, I want to be consistent. I've got red-black cards. There's a good card in the pack for me I've already taken. Goes with a solid option of the Rakdos Drake, which is exactly what an aggressive red-black deck wants.
Okay, so let's take a look at Rickaby pick 5. Now again, look at all these gates. They're just all there. Anyone who wanted the gates at this table could have had them really at a very low price. So what are we looking at here, Zach?
I mean, I think the thing to pay attention to in this pack is just how underpowered it is. You're not really going to want to dip into Drown and Filth without a lot else to do with it. Test Pilot you're not excited about. Cluestone you're not excited about. Nivik Cyclops, actually a card that you can probably get behind.
That's a good card.
The downside is almost all of your cards that you've taken so far cost 3 right now.
Right.
So
okay.
You're kind of not really looking to add a 3-drop, especially a Defender, which you need to set up. A lot of the rest of these cards don't do anything for you.
Maybe Steeple Rock, but I mean, he hasn't picked a white card yet.
And the interesting thing about Steeple Rock is you're probably going to want to take this gate if you're going to play a 3-color deck that features Steeple Rock with one of the colors being white.
Okay.
Because Gate is just a more powerful card. And finally, Showstopper, Riot Piker. Riot Piker, a great aggressive card, but just not the same quality. I would probably either take Piker and say, look, I'm all in, or actually just take this Gate right here and open myself up to some of the white cards in pack 2.
See, Riot Piker is a very interesting card. You say all in. The thing is, there are few more miserable experiences in current block draft than having a Riot Piker that is just running in to die.
Exactly.
You know, we like choices, and as Goblin Pikers go and variants on that, this one, you know, you put Madcap skills on it, you're feeling really quite funky about life. But as it is, big risk. Let's see whether he went Riot Piker or whether he went Orzhov Guildgate. He goes for the gate. And actually, it turns out from our 4, seats 3 through 6, User, Rashid, Rickaby, and Luis Scott Vargas, they could have taken any number of gates. That is the only gate that gets picked in this segment of the draft. And it's really in the sweet spot for where we think gates may well be drafted. So interesting to see that they were so open at this table. So we move on, we get to Luis Scott Vargas. Now, of course, you saw all of his picks as they happened live at the draft. But he kicked off Savage-Born Hydra, Krasis Incubation, and Scab Clan Giant. So big, and removal in between. Oh, and super big. Yeah, we need Marshall to reach a little bit higher. So let's take a look then, Zach. His pick 4, what's he thinking?
Right, and I think, again, what's interesting about this pick is the context of the rest of the draft. So you're in a big base red-green deck. You've got Krasis Incubation. You're either setting yourself up for a solid 3 colors or splashing a really powerful removal spell. You're not really looking at Massive. You're probably not looking to pick a Cluestone this early, or at least one that's not in your colors. Gleam of Battle, really good, but it actually kind of wants to capitalize on a lot of smaller creatures, not a few mid-range ones. You've got a Guildgate here if you want to dip into black, something you're paying attention to. This Gruul Cluestone, on the other hand, not your Dimir Cluestone, on color, helps you cast Hydra, helps you cast Giant, helps your mana work for Krasis Incubation. So, you know, not really excited to take a Cluestone 4th, but reasonably good here.
And is that what he's going to take? It is, I think.
I think it is.
He takes Cluestone. I'm really interested in Ubulsar Gatekeepers because people play the white one because they want a guy, they play the green because they want the life and so on. And it seems like this goes super late. It's like, is -2/-2, Zach, not as good as it looks like it is?
I think it's probably pretty good.
Right.
I think one of the issues is that your black deck, you know, the Rakdos or I guess Borzhov, as people have called it to me.
Boros, Orzhov, and Rakdos.
Boros, Orzhov, Rakdos. Usually a lot more of aggressive deck, and so not playing as many gates, not playing, you know, I mean, obviously you want a removal spell, but a 2/4 not always what you're looking for. I still think this card really very powerful. I just think that, you know, it might go later because it doesn't slot in as nicely to the existing archetypes.
Okay, so he's taken the Cluestone. Let's look at pick number 5 for Luis Scott Vargas. Clear a path, destroy a defender. You've got Debt to the Deathless. That's a card Marshall Sutcliffe was talking about when talking about the valuation of cards. Check out his piece on YouTube from yesterday. Got another Guildgate there. Renegade Krasis, the rare, still in that pack. A Zurtar Druid, we see. Thrashing Mostok, that's a card I value very highly. I like that card a lot. But where would you think he goes here?
You know, I mean, your Guildgate, something you're looking at tremendously, given that you just took a Mana Fixer. Generally, Guildgate's more powerful than Cluestones. I think Renegade Krasis in the pack very late, extremely powerful card. Double green, a little bit scary though. Thrashing Mostok, high quality, exactly what your deck wants to be doing. But Zhur-Taa Druid, just clearly the most powerful card in the pack, I think. Arguably the best common in the set. You need ramp, you're in Gruul, you need early drops. I think Zhur-Taa Druid, pretty clearly the pick here.
And is it? Let's see. Here we
Vanna
go.
White.
It was indeed
Very nice.
Zhur-Taa Druid. Now, of course, if you want to go even deeper into the draft, you can see every pick for all 8 players. And we'll be doing exactly the same this morning. Next round, we'll have one of the players from the draft that you saw this morning let us know how their opening picks went and see where they can navigate the draft. It's an amazing tool. Hope you take good use of it. So we're inside the maze. Rich Hagon and Zach Hill, we're heading back to the news desk.